The opinions expressed by the host and guests in this show are not necessarily the views of Children's Health Defense.
Good morning, CHD. It is Monday, the 7th of July, 2025. Well, what a weekend. I'm here in Texas, Austin, Texas, and we have had rain like we have never seen before. And I know that our viewers and everybody watching and sending lots of prayers and love to all the families of those that lost their lives in the flood. It was just unthinkable what's been happening here in Texas, but more to come on that throughout the week, I'm sure, on CHD TV and through the Defender. But anyway, we have a packed show for you this morning. I'm going to bring Karl on in just a second, and we're going to be talking about the dangers of vaccines, particularly MMR and autism. Then we have a live Unvax home study. So that'll be live here in just 15 minutes. Then we're going to go to mothers to be, and then we've got another unvaccinated story. So do contact us. Contact Naomi at stories@CHD.TV, and Naomi will get you on the morning show, or pre-recorded if you don't really feel like going live with us. But we really want to hear your unvax stories in your home, and also pure unvaccinated. Maybe there's some of you with generations of unvaccinated. We want to hear from you. This is very exciting. All right, so let's start now with bringing on Karl Jablonowski from our science department, our senior research scientist at Children's Health Defense. Good morning, Karl.
Good morning, Polly.
I'm particularly excited about what you're about to do, and we don't have a lot of time, so I'm going to let you rip on it. But I feel what you're about to talk about completely stands up for my son, Billy, who was injured after just one vaccine, the MMR vaccine, and the consistency of people and press saying that MMR and vaccines do not cause autism is exhausting. And I actually had a family member this weekend saying, I do not agree with you of what happened to your son. It's beyond understanding. Anyway, Karl, I'm going to hand over to you to put my family member right.
Well, thank you. So to talk about MMR and autism, we really have to put it in historical context. And I think the largest context for that is 1998, when Dr. Wakefield published in The Lancet a study that he did on 12 kids, most of which had gastrointestinal complications. They had an elevated methylmalonic acid in their urine, which means that the children's bodies were not processing vitamin B12 properly. And he presented the hypothesis that since all of them had been vaccinated with MMR, that perhaps the MMR vaccine had something to do with it. Fast forward 4 years, a Danish group in 2002 wrote a study called A Population-Based Study of Measles, Mumps, and Rubella Vaccination and Autism. And oddly, I remember this study coming out. And I say oddly because I was not in anything close to a medical field. Also, the World Trade Center had just been attacked. In 2002, we were at war with the Taliban. Nothing was getting through mainstream media except that. However, MMR does not cause autism got through mainstream media. I mean, I know it really well. And at the time, I didn't really know what autism was. But I knew it wasn't caused by MMR because my media outlets told me. I didn't even really know what MMR was, but whatever it was, I knew it didn't cause autism. This study that the Danish group pushed out, Dr. Wakefield's paper is the very first citation. I mean, it is, you could dress it up as the takedown of Andrew Wakefield. It is a prolific platform. It's New England Journal of Medicine, which is probably, some would consider the best medical journal in the United States, where the Lancet would have been the best medical journal in the world. It's been cited by over 100 PubMed index journals, over 1,000 other citations. And most of the papers that cite the Madsen study of 2002 talk about vaccine hesitancy. This is the springboard for that we shouldn't be questioning the safety of vaccines. And what happened next was, I mean, it's pretty horrific. Wakefield's paper was partially retracted 2 years later and fully retracted 6 years later. And there is a chilling effect that settled over the scientific community, because Wakefield, in essence, was gibbeted. A gibbet is a medieval torture device that you would put a prisoner in and hang him from the castle wall or from somewhere clearly visible to demonstrate to the population that you should not be committing crimes. Except in this case, you should not be questioning the safety of the MMR vaccine. Now, the Madsen study states, and I'm a quote, "This study provides strong evidence against the hypothesis that MMR vaccination causes autism." And I'm going to give away the punchline. That is a lie. It's my opinion that it's a lie, but it is a well-founded opinion. The paper later goes on to say the power of the study is reflected in the narrow 95% confidence interval. What a 95% confidence interval in statistics, you find a signal, but then you allow for, we're 95% confident that our signal is going to fall under this. And it is striking just how wide the confidence intervals are for autistic disorder, as Madsen said, where you have it's the relative risk is 0.92. So they're saying that the MMR vaccine is slightly protective against autism, but they had a huge confidence interval, 0.68 to 1.24. In lay terms, that means the authors are 95% confident that recipients of the MMR vaccine are anywhere from 47% less likely to 24% more likely to be harmed by the MMR vaccine manifesting as autistic disorder. That is not strong evidence for anything. Furthermore, it's problematic if your effect falls away from 1.0. So, I mean, the MMR vaccine, they're trying to say that it does not cause autism, but their data tends to say it's slightly protective. But the authors are not saying that the MMR vaccine is protective against autism. Technically, they could. Viral encephalitis can be a precursor to autism, and they don't want to go down that road because mumps, measles, rubella, they're all live viruses in the vaccine, and they all can create viral encephalopathy. Further, there is an adjustment inversion. So in statistics, when you measure something, it's not always as clear cut as a strict measurement, because perhaps your sample size you're measuring is biased in one way or another. And when Madsen paper adjusts for the inversion, what happens is I can see from their raw data, their unadjusted data, that they have a risk of 1.9 for autistic disorder, and that transitions to 0.92. So what that means is the unadjusted, they're seeing a risk, and then they're minimizing the risk by adjusting. The problem there is what they choose to adjust. They're choosing employment status of the head of the household and mother's education. So, I mean, on the face of it, either of those could be an okay reason to adjust for. However, the very next year, the second author of the paper wrote another paper saying, which was entitled "The Association Between Thimerosal-Containing Vaccines and Autism." And when they did their adjustment, they did not include employment status of the head of the household or the mother's education. They did include the child's place of birth, the 5-minute APGAR score, the mother's age at the birth of the child, and the mother's the country of birth. specifically not the other two variables that they adjusted for. And what this shows me is that they are cherry picking their confounding variables to adjust their statistics so that it aligns with the narrative that they already wrote before they wrote this paper. Like, the Madsen group did not learn anything from this paper. They just went to go seek the evidence to support their narrative, and I'm pretty sure they changed their evidence. And there is something that a lot of people call a mathematical error in this paper. It's not a mathematical error. A math error is 2 + 2 = 5. Whoops. That's not what happened. At most generous, I could call this a cohort confusion. The basis of this paper, you need a baseline of unvaccinated, and these authors are confused about who is vaccinated and unvaccinated. They actually move kids with autism from vaccinated into an unvaccinated group. In their table 1 statistics, the unvaccinated kids with autistic disorder is 47. They moved, and in table 2, the number is 53. So they moved 6 kids who were vaccinated with autistic disorder into the unvaccinated group. And very similar thing with autism spectrum disorder. It was 70 kids in table 1 and 77 kids in table 2. Now, that's only a swing of 13 kids, but it makes a huge difference because the total numbers are pretty small. It's over a 10% increase in the baseline of unvaccinated autistic kids. And when you calculate the relative risk of table 2, it conforms with their narrative. It's 1.03 relative risk, not statistically significant. However, from table 1's own accounting, you have a relative risk of 1.18. It's not statistically significant because the error bars are from 0.97 to 1.44. So I can't say that, there's an 18% greater chance for autism if you had an MMR vaccine. I can't say that that's 95% confidence in that statement. However, from their own data, I can say that they're 90% confident in that statement, and that's the troubling. You can't get a group of scientists to take a look at this data and wave your magic wand of statistical adjustments and then claim it's strong evidence against the hypothesis. It's maddening. What is more maddening is they will never release the data. The second author, Havid, said that the Danish law prohibits releasing the data, which is doubly troubling because that means that the people who peer reviewed this paper did not have access to the data. This stands as a pretty big stain on the New England Journal of Medicine's reputation, that they would even publish something that is not even internally consistent, and that they do not have access to the data that they were used to generate these numbers. And as a scientist, I'm pretty insulted by this paper. As a society, we should be pretty wary of scientists. We like to think that science is an altruistic pursuit of knowledge, but knowledge is power, and power corrupts, and scientists are corruptible. And you'd think it would stop there, but it doesn't. Havid, who is the second author of that paper, published another study in 2019 called Measles, Mumps, Rubella, Vaccination, and Autism, a nationwide cohort study. And Jeremy Hammond and Dr. Varia and Dr. Hooker of CHD published a counter called Havid et al. 2019 Vaccine Autism Study, Much Ado About Nothing. And in Havid's study, they were talking about how even in susceptible populations, MMR does not cause autism. However, their susceptible population was only limited to siblings. If you had a sibling who had autism, They weren't looking at other confounding problems, with genetic risks. And pretty damning is that in Havid's paper, 1% of their cohort had autism, yet in the intervening years, it should have reflected 1.6%. So that means 40% of all autistic kids in Denmark were not included in the study due to exclusion criteria. Now, there is an inconsistency in the study that statistician Dr. Elizabeth Clarkson found and actually confronted the authors. They showed the relative risk of MMR causing autism was declining, while simultaneously throughout the entire world, autism is on the incline, and that their own supplementary data showed that it is increasing. And Havid replied to Clarkson by saying they couldn't reproduce the figure of their study. And that is just maddening, because science, it's nothing if it's not reproducible. And I mean, that's even like, I should be able to go to some other country, find similar data, and recreate this, what Havid found. Or I should be able to take Havid's data and use a different analysis method and find something similar. But what's going on here is Havid can't even recreate the own data, his own figures in his paper from his own data that nobody else has access to. And that's not reproducible science. And I mean, a while ago in the United States, we had what was called snake oil salesmen who would sell remedies using falsehoods. They didn't go away. They just got better at looking legitimate. And I mean, ultimately, it comes down to the problem is not that they're selling it. The problem is that we're buying it. And, Madsen's paper was 23 years ago. It has never been retracted or never have, the errors corrected in the intervening 23 years. At this point, it would be an act of archaeology to go and fix it and comment on it. And in those intervening 23 years, people who had legitimate concerns about MMR causing autism were dissuaded from manifesting those concerns by preventing their children from receiving that vaccine, solely based on this paper and other papers like it in a scientific community where vaccinology is really a forbidden science.
Carl, and meanwhile, so many children and babies die. I got a question for you. Well, first of all, the fraud. I mean, moving vaccinated autistic kids into another, I mean, that's just plain fraud.
Yes. I mean, their two tables don't even line up. Something is falsified. I mean, deliberately, or I mean, I'm pretty gullible, when Peter Marks emailed Rochelle Walensky to her private email address, I'm like, well, people make mistakes, but no, I mean, she was the director of the CDC. You would think you would put at cdc.gov at the end of that email. But yes, it is an incorrect paper, just internally inconsistent. And yes, I think you're safe to say it's fraud.
Carl, so you're very level-headed. You do the science, you see what you see, you say it the way it is, you don't stray, you don't get involved in conspiracy theories. I've seen that about you. So here's my question for you. And I mean thousands of stories that we've recorded of parents who say the same thing over and over again, we're told that it's in our heads, this is not science and we're all crazy. Do you, Carl, and it's fine either way, but I want to know what you think. Carl, do you believe us parents when we tell you that our children were fine, they had the MMR or an injection, they then had the seizures, they then get a diagnosis of autism? That's their word for our vaccine injury. Do you believe us?
I absolutely believe you. And I'm going to say scientists are the last ones who are going to admit there's a problem with MMR causing autism. I'm a data scientist and I can pick apart any medical record system to find the signals in the noise, but that data has to be collected and it has to be shared. I read prolifically for Children's Health Defense, but I can only read what's written. And the chilling effect on vaccines in the scientific community, it's real. People don't study vaccines and vaccine adverse events because their lives will be destroyed, just as Dr. Wakefield's was. And it's, I mean, it's pretty maddening to live in this surreal world where we actually have a forbidden science.
Yeah. Well, Karl, look, thank you. We're out of time, but thank you so much for coming on so early in the morning to do the show and educate us. I hope we get you back more and more to put us right. And we're so proud of you in our Children's Health Science Department. Thank you, Karl.
Thank you.
All right, everyone. So now we have got a live story, live Vax on Vax story. I've just met Bronwyn literally a couple of minutes ago. So Bronwyn, welcome to the show. Good morning.
Thank you.
Good to have you here. All right. Well, so I think the first thing people need to know is that you have a master's in genetics. And it's very important because we're told we're really stupid, us mothers, with vaccinating children. So
It's very true.
don't mess with Bronwyn. Bronwyn, tell us your story. Let's go back and talk about, because you've got 5 children.
I do. I have, yeah, there they are. My oldest son, I thought I was going to do everything right. We had a horrible experience in the hospital, but everything was okay after that. He got all the normal vaccines because I didn't think to, well, that's Quinn. I didn't think to question any of that. And he was a happy, engaging baby. And then I took him in for his 1-year appointment. And he had been walking for a month already. He had a few words. After that appointment, he lost eye contact. He lost his words. He started walking on his toes. He started compulsively stacking his toys. You know, you've heard this story before. But I didn't add it up until much later.
So Bronwyn, just for a second, let's get this, set this up for everyone. So this is a vaxxed, unvaxxed story. So you and your husband, did you have any conversations about vaccines before you had your first child? Did you even talk about it?
Not really, other than neither one of us ever believed in the flu shot, but that we just didn't really question much of the rest of it.
And how old is your oldest child? So
he is 21 now.
21 now. So we're going back a bit. Did they do vaccines in pregnancy in those days?
No one told me about vaccines in pregnancy until my 3rd.
Okay. So you have your first child and you're fully, you're not questioning, why would you? And you continue on the schedule.
Right. And then we lost him. I can say though, he is mostly recovered. He lost his diagnosis at about 16 and he is going to college across the country from us. He's doing great.
He's doing great. But so he had a reaction to the shots.
We will never get his early childhood back.
That's right. And so but you didn't realize it was a vaccine because you went and had another child and vaccinated the second child?
I did. When he was 19 months old, I had my second child. And again, didn't really question anything. At her 4-month shots, she had the DTaP screen. So
how did she do? So she's on schedule.
She was, yeah. So 4 months, she had that reaction. Everyone told me that was normal. But in between her 4-month and her 6-month appointment, I dove in and I didn't know what to do. How naive I was. I didn't know I could delay that appointment. I didn't know that I could seek out another doctor. I took her in and the nurse who did her vaccines was very efficient. She came in with 3 syringes and she pinned my daughter to the table and she went shot, 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 Band-Aid, Band-Aid, here's your baby. And then she said, oh, whoops, one of the Band-Aids stuck to me. And of course, there's a little spot of blood on my shirt. Driving home, I remember the intersection, or I stopped at a red light, and this feeling just settled over me that I now have my child's blood on me. And that was the last vaccine any of us got.
Wow, so awful that when you hear so many times from holding down, jabbing them in all the limbs. I mean, now that we know what we know, it is nothing but child abuse. It is so barbaric. But we didn't know, Bronwyn. Okay, so then you have baby number 3 and you plan a home birth.
So yeah, I hated those hospital births. And by number 3, I said, we're going to do it all right this time. But I think I was very depleted. I didn't know as much about nutrition at the time. So the continuous pregnancy, breastfeeding, pregnancy again, that pregnancy never fully implanted well. And I had a placental abruption at 26 weeks. And so he was born by C-section. Vertical incision, by the way, because it was so early and they told me I'd never have another vaginal birth. Spoiler, I had 2, second one at home. Ladies question everything.
So he's born at 26 weeks.
Right.
Wow.
He
And so
missed an entire trimester of pregnancy. He was 1 pound, 10 ounces at birth. And so then we got initiated into what happens in the NICU. For an early preemie, they predict that they'll be there until their due dates. And so we knew he would be there for about 3 months. And I forget what the cutoff is, but it's something like 30 weeks, where a baby who's born before 30 weeks, they'll do the birth dose of hepatitis B at 30 days. Now, if I didn't already smell a rat with the vaccine schedule, that would have been a major red flag, because that's so arbitrary. Why would you do that? But he was doing okay. And at 30 days, they came to me and said, it's time for hepatitis B. And I declined.
Bronwyn, how
And-
much did he weigh at 30 days?
He had probably gotten up to 2.5 pounds, maybe 3.
They want to give hepatitis B to 2.5, maybe 3-pound baby.
Right.
Wow.
And keep in mind, a 29-week baby at 30 days is totally different than a 26-week baby at 30 days. It's just, there's no rhyme or reason to it. But I declined, and they said, okay, well, we'll talk about that again at 2 months. So then 2 months comes along, and he is barely 5 pounds. He's still using supplemental oxygen. He's still getting tube fed. And they say, it's time for the 2-month schedule. Okay. He was due July 7th. He's born April 4th. This is early June. They're coming to me. He should still have been inside my body for another month. But simply because he left my body 2 months prior, it's time for DTaP and Hib and polio and Hep, the whole thing. And in every other way, for preemie's development, they consider what their original birth date might have been. That makes sense? So it's 6 months old. We were looking at him like a 3-month-old baby. But when it comes to the vaccine schedule, it's all chronological. So the same schedule that a 12-pound 2-month-old gets, my barely 5-pound early preemie is going to get.
So you fight them off?
I did. So our main nurse said, it's time for his vaccines. Here's all the vaccine information sheets. And I declined. And she's like, okay, I'll write that down. The next day, when I went back, there was a nurse practitioner, and one of the neonatologists waiting to talk to me. And they said, we're concerned that you declined the vaccines without taking the vaccine information sheets. And I was trying not to laugh. I said, okay, give me one of the sheets. Now, what's on this paper that's not in the pink book? And only one of them knew what that was. So the pink book is a publication put out by the CDC for healthcare providers. And there's a chapter on every disease that we have a vaccine for. And it goes into great detail about the disease and the vaccine itself. It's a huge textbook. And the one who knew what that was said, wait, you read that? I said, yes, I read it cover to cover. This was not some spur of the moment whim. I've spent more time on this question than I did on my master's thesis. I quit vaccinating the rest of our family. And I will give them credit. They left me alone after that.
It's an incredible story. So how old is that third child now?
He is now 17, and he has
how-
not been to a hospital since the year he was born.
Okay, so it's because we hear so many stories of preemies that died of SIDS following shots, and you can
Right.
see why with what you've just told us.
Right.
So he's never had a vaccine. He's 17 years old. And is he okay? Does he have autism? Does he have seizures?
He has no allergies, no asthma. He is very healthy. He's smart. He's funny. He is a great brother to the rest of his siblings.
It's amazing. Bronwyn, I'm so proud of you. Wow. Because it's so hard when you're in hospital, when you're feeling fragile, you've had an awful shock, you've had a C-section with this preemie, and these doctors are relentlessly coming down on you and scaring you. but you stood
Right.
for
Right. It was very scary. And trying to get him out of the hospital was an adventure too. I've learned some things about that. You know, we passed his due date and I finally went in one day and I cornered the head neonatologist and I said, what criteria are you looking for to discharge him? And I caught her flat-footed and she said, how about tomorrow? I said, great, I'm taking my baby home. They wanted to get him totally off oxygen, but I have passed this along to other people too. Get a very clear list of what they're looking for, no matter who's in the hospital. Get a very clear list so that everyone's on the same page and they don't try to say, oh, well, wait till this, wait till this. And that ended up working. So, because he would have been there for another several weeks. But as it was, I got him home, I got him off oxygen. We transitioned to breastfeeding. I went on to breastfeed him until he was 2.
Wow. Well, it's amazing. So then you went on and had 2 more babies.
He did. So my next baby was full term. Everything went great with that pregnancy, but I couldn't find a midwife to help me after what happened with him. So she was born in the hospital and she's now 14. She gets sick about once every 3 or 4 years for one day. She is just incredibly healthy.
And your last child?
Number 5 was born at home. He got absolutely nothing that the hospital has to offer, and he runs circles around everybody.
How old is your 5th child?
He is 8. He'll be 9 at the end of the summer.
And does he have seizures or allergies or all these things that vaccinated children have? Does he have any of those?
He has none of those. He's gifted. He is very smart.
So, Bronwyn, let's summarize this up. You have 2 vaccinated children, 3 unvaccinated. You, in your own words, describe the difference between health-wise and otherwise. Clearly, you love them all exactly the same. So
Right.
just describe the difference between your vaxxed, unvaxxed home study.
I mean, progressively, I felt like I was more and more confident in trusting that we are given all that we need to survive and to thrive in this world. You know, I wanted that with my first child, but really was only the last child who got all of those things. And they look alike because they look like brothers, but they are not having the same experience in life. It's totally different. And I see in my youngest child what my oldest child could have been. And I don't, like you say, I don't love him any less. He had his own journey, and I'm grateful that he's here and that he is who he is. But there are things he missed out on.
Bronwyn, you know, it's really true. We are so pleased for the unvaccinated children. We're so pleased. We feel like our vaccinated children took one for the team for the unvaccinated to be free, but it's still a kick in the gut.
Yes.
That our children are vaccinated and injured to various different degrees.
Yes.
Could have been prevented, but of the lies of it all.
Very much.
Just heard from Karl, our senior science researcher at CHD. I mean, just hearing the science and the whole fraud, everything that went behind it, the deception, and it's still going on today.
It is.
What's your advice to that young mum?
Trust that you have what you need. Also, your body and your baby belong to you, not your doctor. I don't want to hear any more of this. My doctor said no. My doctor said I had to. My doctor said that. Go ahead and take their advice into account. But this is your decision. You're the one who lives with it, not your doctor.
That's right, Bronwyn, totally. I understand that. What do you think about, you know, we've got Robert F. Kennedy Jr. in there, and we're hopeful that he actually does stop this. And I know it's a hard job, no one's bashing him, but my goodness, it's hard. We've never been in a position where we've had somebody that maybe can potentially stand up for us. But what's it going to take for this to stop?
I don't know, because we used to live in New York. And I will tell you, I felt like I was making some headway with some of those legislators as they were taking away our religious exemption. And in the end, they had other pressures that were greater than understanding what they were demanding of our kids. So there are too many purpose incentives.
Lou, can you bring me on with Bronwyn? It feels kind of weird talking in the background now. Thank you. There we go. We do this, by the way, viewers, if you think it is weird, we do this so that when, we have a whole history of vaccine injury stories and vax, and my face in it is just annoying. And we need just Bronwyn. But now we're going to have a chat. I'm quite old, as you can tell, but back in the days, years ago in the 90s when I had my children, we didn't have all the information everyone has today. Like they can find out they're pregnant, I don't know, something like 3 weeks or something. Then they have, all the fear of it's an ectopic pregnancy, or it's this, or it's that. There's so much information. Then they've got internal scans and they've got, I don't know, when I listen to the young mothers of today, this fear that's going on from the midwives, from the hospitals, it's so much information and it always ends in medical intervention, which ends in disaster 9 times out of 10. But again, back in my day, you found out you were pregnant about, I don't know, whatever, and they went to the midwife around 12 weeks, and then they saw you at 20 weeks, did a scan, and then they left you on your own. And in the scan, you couldn't even tell if it was a baby. It didn't even look like just a spine is all you could see. But now it's just, and then the mothers are being made to go every single week to have scans because they think it's big or they think it's small or there's this or there's that. And this is, I think, what the problem is. They're just, these young mums are just living perpetual fear because they're constantly.
And really, fear is a useless state of mind. It's not, what do you get out of fear? It's not going to help you make a decision. And I understand why there's such a strong desire to say, oh, my doctor will take care of that. But no, you're the one who gets to live with this. And if they're trying to keep you in fear, that is not for your benefit, it's not to your baby's benefit. Fear is not perfect love casteth out fear, okay? Fear is not the state that God wants us to be in.
That's right. I was just like, my mother said to me the other day, oh, you can't give honey to my child. She's not quite 1 yet. I'm like, okay, but you're okay to put vaccines in with aluminum and all that other stuff, but not any like Manuka honey and a tiny bit of whatever. That's not okay because we're not thinking anymore. Bronwyn,
No.
I loved having you on this morning. So lovely to meet you. And
Yes.
so it's a good way to do this, people. Come on, just Good Morning CHD and do this. Your family are absolutely stunning. And I'm just so proud of you that you fought like that. You should probably write a book, actually. I think there's probably something you could do because that's really important with your third child, how you fought that. People want to know how to be like that.
Well, I've heard you speak, I've heard you have so many stories on here where someone says, my baby was in the NICU and they just get snowed. So I felt like it was important to show it is possible, even with a medically fragile baby, to raise that child without vaccines. It's totally possible. He's living proof.
Yeah, he is living proof. Wonderful. Okay, well, Bronwyn, thank you for coming on. We will write your 2 first children's names on our bus with the injury.
Thank you.
And we don't have an unvaccinated section, but just because it would be so big now. But thank you for your advice. Thank you for all that you do and for coming on CHD TV this morning.
Thank you.
All right, everyone, I'm going to hand over to mothers to be now with Isabella and Jonathan, and then we're going to go to another unvaccinated story. So pray big, stand firm, never settle. And tomorrow, Michael Caine will be with you.
Good morning, CHD. This is Isabella Yon. I'm here with our Mothers-to-Be segment where we chat all things pregnancy, preconception, birth and postpartum. I'm here today with Jonathan Tommy, and he's going to be chatting to us all about toxins and the impact that they have on fertility and pregnancy and even baby. So hi, Jonathan. Thanks so much for joining us.
Good morning, Isabella. How are you?
Doing well, thank you. Let's kick us off with a brief overview of what we actually need versus what we're sadly commonly exposed to in this world.
Okay, so let's run first slide on this, and you'll just see where we stand with the current situation, obviously what we would like. Currently, we have a great deal of susceptibilities in infants. We have a high incidence of preterm births, birth defects, premature labor, a lot of impacts on the developing fetus. And my issue here is, are we creating this health crisis before birth? And I think one has not really addressed this in a lot of different foundational platforms. The impact of toxins are absolutely horrific when it comes to fertility and pregnancy outcomes and the health of the baby. So we really do need to address toxins, and we're going to cover this, and we'll also have a post on Mothers to Be blog on this. But the impact of toxins is absolutely massive.
And I know there was a study that EWG did that a lot of people talk about that really highlights the severity of the chemical exposure to babies when they're actually in the womb. And I was shocked to hear that, and just that these toxins can actually pass through to the baby. Do you mind expanding a little bit more about that?
Sure. Well, let's run to that slide. And obviously, in advance of 2004, when this environmental working group study was done, we thought that the mother and her placenta protected the growing baby from all toxins that the mother has circulating around the blood system. So the problem is that since that study was released, you can see just this is on 10 children. 287 chemicals were found in the newborn's cord blood. So obviously these are chemicals that have got through the placenta into the baby, of which 180 of those are carcinogenic, and 217 were found to be toxic to the brain and nervous system, and 208 of those 287 chemicals cause birth defects. So we know that mum isn't there really, and her placenta, they don't stop these toxins going through. And if it has this impact on the development of the baby from embryo, fetus, and then baby, we don't really know what is going to happen in terms of the outcome when the baby is born. Are they more susceptible to environmental toxins such as vaccines as they come out? Because obviously vaccines have created a great deal of conversation, especially with regressions and the increased levels of childhood pandemics. But we also have to really consider environmental toxins, i.e. airborne toxins, things that you put on the body. We'll discuss this a little bit later, and also what is present in the food. So looking at the sources of these harmful chemicals that you're going to be putting into your body, you've got the household products such as cleaners and air fresheners and cosmetics. Think about parabens, aluminum, hormone disrupting chemicals, personal products, shampoos, conditioners, toothpaste. And you've been a brilliant advocate, really, Bella, of looking at what people are actually putting on their bodies or using in the house, or what they're consuming. And obviously vaccines and the exposure to vaccines during pregnancy, along with the environmental exposures, are going to have a massive impact. We have no bodily use for any man-made chemical whatsoever. So of course, what this does to the body is put it under enormous stress. We have to detoxify all of those chemicals so they don't cause disruption and harm to bodily chemical reactions, processes, restoration of health, growth, etc., etc. So it's something that has been completely overlooked by the majority. And I think it's time that individual parents who are looking to conceive, and for the mum to carry a healthy child throughout her pregnancy and beyond, let's take away the majority, if not all, of those predisposed susceptibilities in the infant. And mum and dad have to really start to wake up about where these toxins are, what toxins they're consuming or exposing themselves to, and really put a halt to that, because there's no point in me and you talking about the exposure of these toxins and the importance of detoxification if they still pile them into their systems. So we'll talk a little bit about this later on, but I think this has to be recognized as one of the major issues now associated with fertility and birth outcomes and the health of the baby at the end of the pregnancy when he or she is born.
Yeah, thank you. And so let's talk little bit more about that. How do these toxins actually disrupt reproductive health? Can they impact chances of a successful conception, and how? What impact do they play?
Okay, so we have a slide which really pinpoints some of the outcomes here. So the effects on the mum and baby preconception, this is endocrine disrupting chemicals which can impact balances of hormones. And obviously hormones are massively important for fertility and ovulation, etc., etc. So if you're exposed to these chemicals and they are disrupting hormonal balances, then it's no wonder that people are struggling to even conceive. Bisphenol A is a toxic that's environmentally used in pesticides and environmental chemicals such as industrial fluids, hydraulic fluid, etc. And that has been shown to reduce the success of IVF. So if a mother is toxic with bisphenol A and is going through IVF, of course, she's going to be in tears because she's not falling pregnant through that. And it's likely that one of these chemicals could be disrupting that success rate. So again, we need to look at all of these chemicals that can disrupt fertility, both in males and females. Obviously, the sperm and the health of the sperm, the motility of the sperm, and the count are all going to impact the way in which dad can contribute to obviously fertilization of the cell. So mum and dad have to be really aware that preparing to conceive has to be through removing as many of these body burden toxins as they possibly can, and of course eliminate all exposure to those toxins, because infertility is now through the roof. We have about 15% of couples who are struggling to conceive, and of course this is massively stressful for any parent who wants to start a family or to have another child. So they have to really start considering the impact of these toxins, how they're exposed to these toxins, where they're bringing them into the body, and obviously supporting all bodily detoxification systems. So that's the gut predominantly that eliminates toxins from the body. The liver and the kidneys are there to really filtrate the blood system and remove these toxins before they enter the cells. And of course, the skin is another organ for detoxification. So we have to be very aware of firstly supporting detoxification, and then we have to be very aware of how we're exposing ourselves to these toxins and how we can potentially avoid all of those. The impact of toxins obviously on the microbiome, and this is another massively important section here for the mum, because the microbiome actually translocates from mum to baby. And there's evidence now showing that amniotic fluid has some of these bacteria. Obviously, a natural birth through the birth canal, the baby will pick up beneficial bacteria from that. And then obviously breastfeeding will support the development of that microbiome, which is essential for the development of the baby, especially the maturity of the child's immune system, which is going to take at least 2 years to get up to a degree of maturity. And obviously, when we look at non-steroidal anti-inflammatories, we look at the role of antibiotics, we look at the role of food additives, preservatives, colorants, flavorings, artificial sweeteners. All of these will impact the basic balance of good to bad bacteria in that microbiome. So essential for mum to really look at all of these things that can impact her health.
Yeah, fascinating. Thank you. And I know you've spoken about, or at least touched on products like makeup and shampoo and things that we put on our skin. But what about everyday foods? Are there hidden dangers in everyday foods, and how do they pose a risk to fertility or pregnancy?
Okay, so let's remember one thing. The body requires 3 essential things: nutrients from organic, healthy food products. Nutrients are massively important for growth, repair, how the body actually works. you need oxygen, of course, from the atmosphere, and you need pure, fresh water. Those are the three things. So the body has no need or requirement for toxic chemicals. When we look at foods, most are available, obviously, on supermarket shelves. They have extended shelf lives, so that the nutrients that are in these packaged foods have been removed, obviously, to support the longevity of that food on a shelf. But so many toxic ingredients have been added. And this slide that we've just got up looks at over 10,000 chemicals that have been approved by the Toxic Substances Control Act, the Environmental Protection Agency, and the Food and Drug Administration. So let's just go through some of these that are currently in foods. Potassium bromate, propyl parabens, butylated I can't even pronounce some of these things. So obviously reading labels is essential. All of these things are going to be foreign to the body, creating inflammation, immune responses, and obviously putting further stress on the body's detoxification capacities to remove them, such as the liver function, kidney function, and basically contaminating the bowel. So we've got a lot of things to really look at, and I think when one gives advice to a mother or father looking to conceive, they have to clean up their act in advance of conception. And that would be at least 6 to 9 months. We obviously prefer 12 months, but look at some of these other things, synthetic food dyes. Bobby Kennedy and Maha have really started to look at some of these, the Red 40 as an example. Aspartame is a big problem, sodium benzoate, sodium nitrate, all of these things are added to food. And the problem is testing on these for human consumption is pretty much zero. I think they only test about 5% of these, and most of those tests are conducted on animals. So the reading of labels is absolutely essential. And honestly, if a food has a label, leave it on the shelf and buy something organic, seasonal, that is fresh, that is rich in nutrients. And of course, the Understanding Nutrients book that Mothers to Be has put out gives them a whole list of each of those essential nutrients that the body requires, where to obtain them, what robs that particular nutrient from the body. So it really is a foundation for education, and that is imperative when it comes to being prepared to start conception.
Absolutely. Yes. I like to just always stick with the fact, eat real food. Just keep it really simple, eat real food and avoid all labels. So I think you summarized it nicely. Right. Let's chat babies. What makes babies particularly vulnerable to toxins compared to adults?
Okay, so if we can look at some of these things, obviously a baby starts by the fusion of two cells, the oocyte from mom and the sperm from dad. And these then replicate, and more cells are generated. So a baby starts from one fertilized cell moving forward to create millions of cells per day. And if you look at the susceptibilities, some of these toxins impact the genes. So obviously the baby's DNA could well be impacted by these toxins circulating in the womb, obviously going across the placenta. So the epigenetic impacts of those could distort the way in which those genes are actually controlling, because gene expression is all about how the body is controlled by the genetic material within each cell. So they are very susceptible during their development in the womb if the mum is toxic with these horrible chemicals passing across the placenta to the baby. The blood-brain barrier isn't fully formed and therefore is susceptible to toxins. We have to protect the development of the central nervous system, which is the brain, the spinal cord, etc. And obviously a toxic burden in the mum is going to have a greater impact on the brain as it develops in the baby. Chemical exposures, obviously, with small little cells, it's okay. Mum may feel fine, even though she's carrying a toxic burden. But if those toxins are passing across, remember, we've only got little clumps of cells developing as the baby forms. And obviously, a limited number of cells are going to be exposed to the same level of chemical toxins in the mother's blood, and the impact is going to be greater on the development of that child. Some of these chemical binding proteins are there and very important to detoxify. The baby is very immature when it comes to detoxification abilities. So it's okay that our livers are functioning okay and our kidneys are functioning okay. That's going to excrete a lot of these toxins. But poor little baby, I'm sorry, with underdeveloped organs during the whole development is going to really struggle. And the impact of those toxins on that development are going to be significant if the mother is highly toxic.
Yeah, wow, thank you. And so what are some things that mums can do to minimize their exposure to toxins and protect their babies?
Okay, so let's look at some of these big tick boxes here. Choose organic whole foods wherever possible. I think when you're going out, doing your food shopping, you're preparing your menus, you're deciding what to eat, you've got to now start focusing on avoiding all processed foods and any foods with labels, because all of those are laden with chemicals that can impact you. Read the labels, especially on cosmetics and personal care and household products. You've got some great suppliers of toxic-free personal products. Can you name a few of those companies that you would like to share with the viewers?
Yeah, so there are many different cosmetics now out there, which is amazing. When I first started this journey to kind of clean a living, there was very minimal in regards to cosmetics. And now even, you know, you can go to your local Sephora or Ulta and even find some brands like Ilia who are cleaner. I really like Organic Bunny as a resource. She has a whole website and fully vets all her products. Also, Credo Beauty is great. I can post these maybe in the show notes or on our Mothers to Be website. And really, you know, that's the amazing thing. There is a wealth of clean products now. So we really don't need to be using, you know, these toxic products when there are clean products that really, you know, performance-wise work the same. And it's same with, you know, shampoos and conditioners. I really love the Rocasa brand for shampoo and conditioner. They have a lot of different body care products too. So check them out. But yeah, there's so many. So we can definitely make the switch, and it is so worth it for you and your baby.
Yeah, and I think this is really important because you know we give advice on detoxification, you know, how to improve liver functions, phase 1 and phase 2, really important to detoxify the body. Kidney function, things like far infrared sauna to increase toxic release from the skin. Good gut function as an example. But unless they remove chemicals full stop, they're going to keep continuing to put on body burden in terms of consumption of toxins, putting them on their skin, personal products, and then obviously household products and environmental toxins. So let's just go back and have a look at some other things that they can do on that slide, because it's important that we really start looking at the impact of these toxins and how we have to avoid them. So avoiding all known toxins is absolutely essential. If your body is toxic and you're looking to start to have a baby and a healthy conception, obviously these toxins have to be removed. But how many toxins do you have in the system? Are there tests that you can use to show that you have a high level of toxicity? And if so, what toxins are they? And then how best to get rid of those, how you can support the liver, how you can support the kidney. And I think a professional, functional and integrative practitioner is there who has the experience and the knowledge to better guide you. Because what you don't want to do is just to really take this on board yourself and then struggle with knowing how many toxins you're getting rid of. and what you're doing is correct. So, we're looking at holistic health and seeking a professional, and I know you do great consults with people and can help these people, but it's really important for them to seek professional guidance. I can remember when I was looking after children with autism, one parent took it upon themselves to collate heavy metals from this child who was verbal, and then within 4 weeks of the collation, lost all language. Because what we don't know is how toxic or what sort of toxic burden each of your cells is carrying. We can look at mitochondrial function and see breakdowns in that whole enzymatic cycle, and there could be mercury, there could be fluoride, etc., but you don't really know. So pulling out toxins from the cells is obviously going to increase the burden in the blood system, so you've got to be very careful how you detoxify and the speed of which you detoxify. But massively important to remove all toxins from your life in order to best prepare for a healthy conception.
Absolutely. And to mums watching this, please note that we are saying to do this prior to conception, not during pregnancy, definitely not during pregnancy, but yeah, 6 to even ideally 12 months before you even think of conceiving a child is super important.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. Yeah.
So Jonathan, thank you so much. We always like to end with one final thought. And for today, that is, what if you had to tell one thing to a mother-to-be in regards to toxins, what would that be?
I think when we look at the current pandemics in childhood disorders, from autism all the way through PDD, NOS, learning disabilities, asthma, eczema, obviously, we know the role of vaccines, but we have to reduce and remove any susceptibility in those children. The health of the next generation begins before birth, and every choice we make today is going to shape a child's tomorrow. So you want the healthiest baby you can. Removing toxins is so important, and you've got to start with that and then follow that up with very healthy nutrition and a good lifestyle. Make sure the gut's functioning and all of the other detoxification organs are working well. Let's give your child a really healthy start in its new life and remove any risk or susceptibility of future damage caused by, again, additional toxins getting into their system. Let's get clean.
Amazing. Jonathan, thank you so much for your time. And for those watching, if you'd like to learn more about the work Jonathan does or any of the detox programs, then go to motherstobe.com and you'll find them listed there, and also on social media at Mothers to Be. There's a lot of information, including on the website, a great blog post that kind of summarizes all that Jonathan has chatted about today.
Thank you for having me on, Bella.
Thank you so much.
Inject their kids with this stuff every single day, and some of these kids don't make it. I have friends whose kids get their vaccines, and then a week later their kids die in the middle of the night, perfectly healthy, then dead. Hello, it's not that hard to connect the dots there.
Okay, you ready, Brian?
Already.
Okay, so tell us who you are. Who are you? What's your name? How old are you?
5.5.
5.5. And what's your name?
What's your name?
Why?
Usually he'll say pirate.
How old
Little.
is he?
He's 2.5.
That's
almost
Bubba.
2.5. We
He's
call
called
him
Bubba.
And
we call
that's
him Bubba.
Bubby. I like to call him Bubby. Oh!
And then who's this?
This is Victoria, and we call her Doll.
How old
Doll.
is she?
She's 15 months. Doll.
All right, so this is interesting because you had, this is your first child, and what was, because you haven't vaccinated them. I know she's had the vitamin K, but they had.
She had the vitamin K. That's it.
So So when you were pregnant with her, what made you decide that you weren't going to vaccinate your children?
I had somebody who did some muscle testing on me that told me that I have ADD, not ADHD, just the ADD, and they told me that the reason why I had the ADD is because of my childhood vaccines. So originally, that was one of the big reasons why I didn't want to do vaccinations. Then I looked, my extensive research was going on Joseph Mercola's site and reading Dr. Blaylock's suggestions. And so originally I was gonna
You can put it down to your it's fine.
originally I was gonna vaccinate after 2, and then after talking to a lot of people whose kids have been vaccine injured at different ages, I decided to just not vaccinate them at all. That was just too risky. That there's way more risk in vaccinating than risk in not vaccinating.
And so did you get any pushback from that? From doctors? Or they just, anybody say anything about the fact you're not vaccinating your children?
For us, we haven't had a lot of pushback. My family's been very accepting of my choices, mainly because they probably know that they can't talk me out of my choices. My doctors, I've been lucky to find doctors that were non-vax friendly and non-pushy about the topic.
And so how are your children's health? This is a big question. We're led to believe that the unvaccinated are sick.
They are so healthy. They never get sick. If they get sick, it's nothing that a cold bath can't fix.
I know. Is there any water? Oh, no. Okay, he's doing baby whispering.
Mommy, I'm thirsty.
Thirsty? Let me get you some water.
Good. You want some greens? You want some greens out of the bottle?
It is hot on this bus right now.
Yeah.
So yeah, tell me about the health of your children.
Oh, very healthy. I mean, they rarely ever get even a cold. They get, stuffy noses whenever the weather changes, and that's about it. Teething. That's the extent of our pandemics in our house.
So have you been to the doctor with them for anything?
I mean, we go to our checkups, but we go to doctors that are friendly about our choice to not inject our kids with neurotoxins.
So what do you say to the parents that truly believe, because their doctors have told them that if you don't vaccinate your children, we've heard this so many times, your children will die?
What do I say to those
parents?
parents?
Those parents that just think that the doctors know more than you.
Well, that they don't have to believe everything that they hear, and that doctors are taught what pharmaceutical companies teach them to believe. And in my opinion, it's total faith either way. I mean, you either have this faith that you're going to inject this substance into your kids and it's going to make them not get sick, and who wouldn't want to believe that? Like, I mean, nobody wouldn't want to believe that, but the thing is that the stories are real, that people inject their kids with this stuff every single day, and some of these kids don't make it. We happen to carry a genetic mutation in our family, which I found out with my third, that I have the MTHFR mutation, and I've got 2 copies of it. So thank God I had already made the decision not to vaccinate, because had we vaccinated, they could have had some serious adverse reactions, not just the most common reactions that people just don't equate with vaccines, like eczema and autoimmune issues. A lot of my friends who do vaccinate their kids, and they're welcome to do whatever they want, I don't judge them for that, but they have a lot more sick visits. Their kids are like constantly sick. My kids have great balance, coordination.
He just banged his head. And
And he didn't even, it doesn't, I make him hard-headed.
So, the moral of the story here
Mom, can you put
is
this over my neck?
is what? Tell people, would you give a vaccine again or ever, or would you?
No, not at all. I mean, I think it's, I think that so many of these plagues that keep happening in our country in particular are manufactured by the industry to sell vaccines. I think, you know, I think it's ridiculous. I think it's unethical. I think that doctors, for the most part, think that they're doing the right thing, and whenever they tell you to get your vaccines, in their heart and soul, they're telling you what they think is the right thing to do. But the problem is that they're being taught by people who are pushing an agenda to sell vaccines. You know, and to really question and to listen to your mom gut. If you have friends that whose kids get their vaccines and then a week later their kids die in the middle of the night, perfectly healthy, then dead. You know, hello, it's not that hard to connect the dots there. Like, it's. I mean, and I didn't even know who Andrew Wakefield was until somebody that was pro-vaccine told me. So it's not like I'm like paranoid of autism, although I think that autism is can be extremely scary because you don't know what your kid's going to do, if they're going to run off, if they're going to go and accidentally get drowned or something like that. You know.
Wait, can I ask something?
Yes, go ahead.
Yesterday, my sister fell in the pool and my mommy saved her.
Yeah.
Your sister fell in the pool and your mummy saved her. Good old mummy. It's nice to hear.
I also recommend ISR, Infant Self-Rescue. But she hasn't had those classes yet.
And then her salt began.
You just pulled her on out.
Yeah.
Well, thank goodness for that.
Super mom.
All right, well, so listen, thank you so much for telling your story. It's wonderful that you have unvaccinated, healthy children, and we really appreciate you coming here to do that, and your children are lovely. They're so much fun. And then Nu, he's doing a great job there.
Now the next girl that's coming in, her son is vaccine injured, and they are friends. Her son Bear. Really awesome.
Really awesome what?
Muffins to give you.
Oh, muffins for us.
We love muffins.
Yes.
Okay, good. Let's get that air conditioning back on again.
Would you like your child?
Oh, sure.
Maybe we should just keep this running for the next one coming on.
She's ready.
Okay, yeah, we'll
Show
just keep it
you
running.
her shirt.
Yeah.
Perfect.
Welcome, mate.
Hi.
Hi. Are you homeschooled?
Black was the difference.
No, she's not.
So
She goes to regular school. She's been kicked out of one school already.
Why?
Behavior. She probably could stand to be homeschooled. And I did the first filming of Vax down here in Ocala. I did film festival. I'm really excited about that.
Cool. All right. Thank you, guys. You can take your snacks.
And our water.
This and all CHD TV programming is made possible by generous support from viewers like you. Please consider making a contribution today to keep our programming going strong. Thank you.